Good morning. I'm going to make this announcement first. I saw the Beatles in concert in Chicago when I was 12 years old. That's all I have to say. Okay. My name is Oksana Warbiansky, and I am a member of the Board of Trustees of this congregation. Welcome to all of you. The Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Elkhart is a welcoming community encouraging religious freedom, nurturing individual, spiritual, and ethical growth, celebrating diversity, and promoting a just and sustainable world. If you would like to learn more about this fellowship, please look at our website at uufe.org and join us after the service for our coffee hour. For the listening enjoyment of all, we ask you at this time to please turn off all cell phones. Also, if you need hearing support, please ask for help at the sound desk. Thank you. One announcement. There's a Goshen call to action. Meet with us at 6 p.m. on July 14th, 2025 in Shanklin Park. And the information is written here about what it's going to be about, and it'll be back on the social justice table. It's tomorrow, because today's the 13th, so tomorrow's the 14th. Okay, got it. Thank you.
Morning, everyone. I've been walked through how to do this. It is my first time. Please be patient with me as I stumble through it. Y'all have this lovely gong here, and I'm looking forward to ringing this. So, for those who came before us and made a place for us, I told you I was looking forward to it. Once for those who are here now, and once for those who will come after us and build on the dream. We locked it in eventually, we got there. Our chalice lighting this morning is hidden deep in my phone, so if you could give me just a moment. Here we are. It comes to us from someone named Lai Kinvi. It is called A True Story. This chalice is for the living, the changing, the becoming. This chalice is for losing the script of your life, the chapters about who you are in other people's stories. This chalice is for the lost GPS that was supposed to show you how to get exactly where you wanted to go. This chalice is for skipping the directions, coloring outside the lines, painting not by number, but by silence, by wild abandon, with a brush you made yourself from light deep inside. Startling, vivid, a new voice that already knows you, finally a true story. Y'all have this lovely covenant, so I'd like to join in it together this morning. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. This is our covenant. If we have any kiddos, now would be a great time for RE, but if you're young in spirit, you can go. Like, don't let me stop you. But I believe it's time for our first hymn, Gather the Spirit, right? Sweet.
Please stand if you're willing and able, and let's sing 347. Come, Gather the Spirit. As we prepare to receive the offering, let us reflect on the words of Unitarian Universalist minister, Reverend Rebecca Parker. Our vocation is to love the world. Through our own giving, we love, we heal, we transform, and we bless the world with our gifts. The morning arts offering this morning will be shared with the Elkhart County Symphony, who we heard a few people play a few weeks ago for us, so that was great. So give generously and willingly. Thank you.
Hello, darkness, my old friend. I've come to talk with you again, because a vision softly creeping left its seeds while I was sleeping, and the vision that was planted in my brain still remains within the sound of silence. In restless dreams I walked alone, narrow streets of cobblestone, neath the halo of a street lamp. I turned my collar to the cold and damp, when my eyes were stabbed by the flash of a neon light that split the night and touched the sound of silence. And in the naked light I saw 10,000 people, maybe more. People talking without speaking. People hearing without listening. People writing songs that voices never share. And no one dared disturb the sound of silence. Fool said I, you do not know. Silence like a cancer grows. Hear my words that I might teach you. Take my arms that I might reach you. But my words, like silent raindrops, fell and echoed in the wells of silence. And the people bowed to the neon god they made. And the sign flashed out his warning, and the words that it was forming. And the sign said the words of the prophets are written on the subway walls and tenement halls, and whispered in the sound of silence.
That was refreshing, a different arrangement. At Owl's Club recently, we have been discussing the possibility of offering a class or several sessions on world religions. Feedback has been mostly in favor, but one person said, "Oh no, there's only one God and Jesus is our Savior." This person obviously has little interest in this exploration or study. But I'm glad I'm not that close-minded when it comes to religion, my faith, or spiritual and meditation interests. So this morning I want to share some quotes from various authors and religious perspectives that I have appreciated in my library of books over the years. In his book, The Heart is a Little to the Left, and politically he's to the left, Essays on Public Morality, William Sloane Coffin has really spoken to me over the years. He was a chaplain at Yale University for many years and served as a huge congregation in New York as pastor, as well as being a writer and social activist. Here are some of his thoughts. Without defensiveness, we can face and discuss rather than avoid or deny controversial issues. Good results are all but inevitable. Too frequently, even scholarly minds are biased by what they already know, warped by habits of thought and doubt. And wonder is not reserved for beauty alone. It has an ethical dimension. It leads to reverence. The larger the island of knowledge, the longer the shoreline of wonder. I like that. The larger the island of knowledge, the longer the shoreline of wonder. However deep our anger must always and only measure our love. Values are caught, not taught. I believe it is better not to live than not to love. From Richard Dawkins, the vocal atheist known for his criticism of creationism and intelligent design, here are some quotes from his book, The God Delusion. This quote is the beginning of a chapter titled Secularism, the Founding Fathers and Religion of America. It is conventional to assume that the founding fathers of the American Republic were deists. No doubt many of them were, although it has been argued that the greatest of them might have been atheist. And in the same book, he quotes Barry Goldwater. As I think back, I equate Barry Goldwater to today's Tom Cruise. I don't know, maybe that's a poor analogy or comparison. There is no position, but I agree with him on this. There is no position on which people are so immovable as their religious beliefs. In another chapter in Dawkins' book titled The Roots of Religion, that chapter begins with this quote from Mark Cohn, an English science writer on evolution, biology, and society. To an evolutionary psychologist, the universal extravagance of religious rituals, with their cost in time, resources, pain, and privation, should suggest as vividly as a mandrel's bottom that religion may be adaptive. And finally, from Rodney Stark's book, Discovering God, The Origins of Great Religions and the Evolution of Belief, in a section dedicated to the Roman anti-Semitism, Rodney says, strange ideological commitments have driven some contemporary scholars, especially Rosemary Ruther, Jules Isaac, and John Geiger, to claim that Christians originated anti-Semitism. For this reason, they stress passages in the New Testament that criticize Jews for rejecting Christ and for persecuting Christian missionaries, although they know full well that deep hostility toward Jews was prevalent in Rome long before the birth of Christ. And I will share a few of my comments. I believe I am a product of the universe. The mystery of how and why my life began as a human and what will happen with this life once I stop breathing remains of mystery without any fear or trepidation. I am grateful for my Church of the Brethren heritage, and I respect the multitude of religious faiths and practices that exist on this earth with me, and several of whom have influenced my thinking. But as I have grown in the final stages of my existence in this place, the UU principles stating that we respect the inherent worth and dignity of every person, and we have respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part, those are enough for me.
I like that. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. I think it's time for a second hymn. This is new, so we're going to learn it together. Lizzie's going to play it through once, all the way through. And you go ahead and remain seated so you can, if you want to look at the music, you can. What's the number? 313. Okay, I think it's time to introduce Cory. We've had some good conversations back and forth in the last few weeks. Cory Page has been attending UU services since 2018. He was raised Catholic through no fault of his own. Then spent quite a few years being an angry atheist agnostic, and is now a practicing neo-pagan. His approach to spirituality is largely informed by his recovery from addiction. When Cory isn't writing homilies, he's growing tea herbs in his backyard or binge watching television shows. Cory, welcome to UUFE. You want to raise that?
Thank you, sir. Thank you all so much for having me here. It was a long drive, but this is an amazing little church, and I'm glad that I made it. A lot of dead animals on the way, though. Kind of sad. But yeah, my blessings from Michigan. Glad to be here. Let me pull out my little clicker. Could we get the PowerPoint on the screen, please? That's right. I come with visual aids because I'm one of those A+ students who does extra credit. So if you need to see the screen, you might want to move over a little bit. Hopefully we won't miss too much otherwise. Perfect. So there's a video online that lives rent-free in my brain. This is a screenshot from that video. I think it hit the internet in 2014, which is a sign of just how petty I am that 11 years later, I still remember this video. In it, we have this image where a woman is standing at kind of a display booth, and she's giving a presentation on why good Christian children shouldn't be drinking Monster energy drinks because they are secretly Satanist and trying to corrupt them. One piece of evidence that she gives is that the Monster energy drink logo seen here isn't actually a claw mark or an M, it's actually the Hebrew letter Vav. In Hebrew, letters have a unique quirk where they can also represent numbers, and the letter Vav represents the number 6. And if you put 3 of them next to each other, It means 666, the sign of the beast, according to the book of Revelations in the New Testament. Now, she says this with tremendous confidence, right? And I'm almost convinced until you consider the following. Number one, the middle claw mark is actually larger than the other two, which wouldn't make it Vav, it would make it Nun, which is the number 50, not the number 6. Number two, that's not how you would actually write out 666 in Hebrew. We don't use the same decimal system in Hebrew as we do with our written numbers. Instead, you actually read them from right to left, and you add them together. So instead, it would look like this. I won't pronounce it. I don't know how. But from right to left, it's the numbers 400, 260, and 6. That's how you'd actually write out 666. And last, and perhaps most importantly, she's, for some reason, is connecting the Hebrew numbers 666 with the book of Revelations, but the book of Revelations and the entire New Testament was originally written in Greek, not in Hebrew. So I don't know why she went there. Now, I'm not telling you about this video as an excuse to bully this woman. Believe me, the internet has done enough of that already. Instead, I wanted to focus on how she made her argument. She had an action she wanted parents to take. Don't let your kids drink Monster energy drinks, right? But instead of just making that argument, she instead appealed to Scripture and postured herself as an authority on that Scripture, effectively saying, God wouldn't want kids to drink these Monster energy drinks because they're satanic. And you can trust me, it's in the book, you just have to squint a little bit to see it. But God doesn't say that in the Bible. Not really. And this morning I wanted to go over a couple more things that God does not say in the Bible. I find that it's important to do so. And to do this, I'm going to be digging into a little bit of history of the Bible as a piece of literature. So please join me along with that. And I would like to make a note. I miss having hair. It's a lot colder now. I would like to make a note that I am by no means an expert. I have no formal education in divinity. I'm just a contrarian nerd who likes to do research. Please take everything I'm about to say with a healthy grain of salt, and please look it up yourself if you feel that I got it wrong. I would love to be told how wrong I am. So let's start with something nice and easy and non-controversial. Nowhere in the Bible does God forbid abortion. Non-controversial. People who make this biblically informed pro-life argument tend to use this syllogism. God forbids killing in the Ten Commandments. Terminating a pregnancy is a form of killing. Therefore, God forbids terminating a pregnancy. Ergo, he forbids abortion. Now, we could dig into the science of fetal development and try to make a compelling ethical or moral case about where life starts and where rights are supposed to be distributed according to legal standing. And that's what a lot of pro-choice advocates will do. Or you could make the argument using the Bible and save yourself a little bit of time. So I could easily just point to Numbers chapter 5, verses 11 through 31. This section is referred to as the test for an unfaithful wife. I didn't write the book. I didn't call it that. Please don't look at me like that. I'm just saying what it says. And this passage discusses how if a wife is suspected of cheating on her husband, she should be taken to the temple and she should be given ritual bitter water. And if she has been unfaithful to her husband, God will place a curse upon this water that will make her miscarry. The Old Testament classic also includes a recipe for bitter water, just so you can really do this at home. Now, if God were against abortion, it's kind of odd that he's just doing it himself in this passage, so I have a feeling he's okay with it. But let's not just stop there. Let's instead look at Exodus chapter 21, verses 22 through 25. In these passages, we have God giving sort of an instruction of how violence between people is supposed to be handled, right? So in the first case, in verse 22, it's described that if two men get into a fight, come on, go forward. Did my thing die? Come on. What's happening? They need to know. There we go. Ah, I went too far. There we go. Don't worry about that yet. That's coming up. If two men get into a fight and a pregnant woman were happened to be struck and as a result she were to miscarry, the woman's husband is allowed to demand financial compensation for the loss of the child. Now, in this case, loss of a pregnancy is sort of treated like a property crime. You ruined something that belonged to me and now you have to pay me back for it. But in verses 23 through 25, it's described what should happen if the woman were to be harmed, not the fetus. Now, instead of financial compensation, whatever injury was inflicted upon the woman must also be inflicted upon the person who harmed her. Quote, a wound for a wound, a harm for a harm. The implied value of the adult woman is greater than that of the implied value of the fetus. The total loss of the fetus can be paid for in money, but the mere injury of the woman must be paid for in blood. It's clear, if we look at this text critically, that according to the values of the Old Testament, a fetus does not have the same personhood as an adult. Now, I could also point to millennia of Jewish scholarship of the original Hebrew text that suggests life begins at first breath, not at conception. And I could also quibble with how the phrase "thou shalt not kill" is translated from the original Hebrew script. They actually use the word that's closer to the word murder than to kill, which is, why would you translate it as kill then? Because God's perfectly fine with you killing all throughout the Old Testament. He doesn't seem to have too much of a problem with it. But this is all getting away from my original point. Nowhere in the Bible does God forbid or sanction abortion. In order to make a pro-life argument or a pro-choice argument, you have to really read between the lines. You have to look between different verses and chapters and compare them against one another in order to make your case. It's almost like you have to have an agenda going in and then find your way there. And the case you make could mean the difference between bodily autonomy or oppression, between life and death. Here's another thing missing from the Bible. Satan does not exist in the Old Testament. Now, I want to be clear what I'm talking about here. When I'm referring to Satan, I'm referring to these common ideas of Satan, right? I'm talking about a singular demonic entity who's responsible for all the evil in the world, right? Satan with a capital S, a primary opponent to God who's trying to steal our souls and get one over on the man upstairs, right? Instead of that type of Satan in the Old Testament, we instead get a lot of mistranslations kind of stacked on top of each other. When we first see the word Satan in the Old Testament, it's an angel of God, specifically in the book of Job, chapter 1, verse 6. You might think Satan is the serpent in the Garden of Eden. That's a common interpretation of the Bible, but it relies on believing that all of the books of the Bible are telling a single through-line story and that they were planned ahead of time, and they weren't. And I don't have time to go into all the biblical scholarship on this, but let's just say, for sake of argument, Job, chapter 1, verse 6 is the first time that we see Satan. Anyway, so in Job, Satan first appears as an angel, and he's described by the Hebrew word ha-satan. Now, ha is the definite article in Hebrew, so Satan is referred to as the Satan, okay? And I should put it, yeah, Satan, ha-satan. You read it from right to left, because again, Hebrew. Now, the quirk in Hebrew is the same thing as in English, where we don't use articles with names. I am not the Cory, I am not a Cory, I am not some Cory, I am just Cory. Therefore, when we see ha-satan, that's not a name. That's a title. That's a job description. We also don't have any idea whether it's the same Satan over and over and over again. It could just be different angels serving this function. So when we're seeing ha-satan in the Old Testament, what we're seeing is an angel with a specific function. Satan means accuser or adversary. And the job of ha-satan is to hold humanity to account to see if they are worthy of God's love. The common analogy that's used to describe this point is like ha-satan is a heavenly prosecuting attorney. This is why ha-satan appears in the book of Job. Ha-satan makes the case that Job only loves God because God has blessed him with a good life. He's trying to say, God, Job isn't worthy of you. He just has it good and therefore he's nice to you, right? So God ruins Job's life as a test. Job remains faithful despite his ruined life and proves he is worthy of God's love. He proves Hasatan's case wrong. And that's what Hasatan is meant to be. He's not malevolent or a diabolical entity. It's an angel. Oh yeah, Job's life gets ruined. And then he stays faithful. I forgot to advance it. Thank you. Hasatan isn't malevolent or diabolical. He's just an angel who's doing his job, right? He gives human beings the opportunity to rise to new heights, to prove his accusations wrong. And the problem is, every single instance of Hasatan in the Old Testament, there's over 30 of them, all get translated to English with Satan as a capital S. We turn a title into a name. And when we're reading the Bible in English, and if we assume that we're reading the true word of God, we ignore the fact that this is a text with a lot of editorial history in it. The Old Testament was originally written in Hebrew and has gone through several translations since then. The New Testament was originally written in Greek and then translated into Latin and then eventually translated into English. During each translation, it was fallible human beings who were looking at the words and deciding what word best fit. All this to say, the Bible isn't just the #1 selling book of the world over. It's a document with thousands of years of editorial history. The devil, as they say, is in the details. If we ignore this literary history, we can come to conclusions that aren't supported by the original text. We can invent supernatural boogeymen. We have to look at every book, every chapter, and every verse as having its own complex history, or it can lead us to turning angels into demons. I want to tell you a story. This story isn't in the Bible, don't worry. Let's imagine a gospel where we detail Jesus' childhood. We don't tend to hear a lot about kid Jesus, right? So Jesus is a precocious child. He spends his days molding clay birds and bringing them to life. He carries water on cotton sheets and it doesn't spill. And he preaches to the local priests about how wrong they are at translating Hebrew. Just normal supernatural kid stuff, right? And let's say that one day, Jesus is collecting water for his parents, and a local villager decides, oh, I'm going to play a prank on Jesus. So he comes and he makes him spill the water. Aw. So Jesus goes, carry on the boy, and strikes him dead. And then the boy's parents, so upset with the loss of their child, come to complain to Mary and Joseph, and Jesus strikes them blind. And it's only after some really serious sit-down chats where Jesus learns and has his Spider-Man moment that with great divine power comes great divine responsibility. He shapes up, he starts flying right, and starts using his powers for good. Now, is this some weird fan fiction that I wrote when I was bored? No, I'm describing the infancy gospel of Thomas. Now, the reason why you probably haven't heard of this is because it's not in most standard Bibles. The infancy gospel of Thomas is part of New Testament apocrypha. These are gospels or books that have been omitted from most biblical canon for various reasons. In this case, the church took issues with the contents of the gospel, can't imagine why, and it was in the 5th century that Pope Gelasius declared this gospel a heretical work. Fine, can't have any fun. Now, not all apocrypha are weird and horrifying. Some are actually quite captivating. I'm a big fan of one of the Gnostic Gospels, which interestingly is also called the Gospel of Thomas, except this is the Gnostic Gospel of Thomas. In it, it's reflective, it's meditative, it's just a bunch of Jesus's sayings that are supposed to make you think about stuff. So in the 3rd verse, Jesus said, if those who lead you say to you, see, the kingdom is in the sky, then the birds of the sky will precede you. If they say to you, it is in the sea, then the fish will precede you. Rather, the kingdom is inside of you, and it is outside of you. When you come to know yourselves, you will become known, and you will realize that it is you who are the sons of the living Father. But if you will not know yourselves, you dwell in poverty, and it is you who are that poverty. Cool, right? It kind of reminds me of passages I've read from Taoism or Buddhism, right? It has that kind of gnosis, that divine knowledge to it. So why did it get the axe? Well, it was primarily written in 200 CE, which is after we started canonizing books. So it was a little late to the party. It doesn't have a story to it. Like I said, it's just Jesus saying things, which doesn't really read as well. It doesn't synergize well with the other Gospels. It doesn't tell the same stories as the synoptic Gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And it focuses on, again, gnosis, this having heavenly knowledge as a way to achieve divinity as opposed to through faith and works. These Gospels I've mentioned are just two examples of Apocrypha. But there are dozens more ancient books about Christ that have purposely been excluded from biblical canon. Even though I find value in the Gospel of Thomas, the Gnostic one, not the scary kid Jesus one, a decision was made over 1,500 years ago that this Gospel doesn't count because it doesn't fit the story the church was trying to tell. And while there are plenty of people who appreciate the story of the Bible as it is, I have to wonder, what might we be losing when what we're being presented is so methodically curated? I want to circle back to this woman and her crusade against Monster energy drinks. You see, the thing is, I kind of agree with her. Not the whole Monster energy things being Satanist thing, that's wild. But I agree that children shouldn't be drinking Monster energy drinks. No one should be drinking Monster energy drinks. They're terrible. They're loaded with sugar and caffeine and artificial colors, and I'm pretty sure they're poison, right? And if she had made her argument based on the contents of the can, I'm 100% with her. But she didn't. She tried to make a biblically informed argument, and I immediately rejected it out of hand because of my contrarian streak. And then I went out of my way to prove how wrong she was, and ironically, I ended up making the same kind of presentation she did, just in reverse, even though I agreed with her. Now, in talking with Steve in preparation for this service, he told me that a lot of people in this room have had, let's say, unpleasant experiences with Christianity. And I'm a recovering Catholic, so I empathize, truly. If you're like me, you were told that the Bible is the ultimate authority on what is right, good, and proper. If you're like me, you've heard people cite the Bible chapter and verse in order to justify terrible cruelty and unkindness. And if you're like me, that was enough to make you skeptical of any appeals to the book. But despite my negative history with Christianity, I can't describe how much fun I had researching this sermon. I went down so many cool rabbit holes. I had to cut 1,500 words from this in order to keep it at like a reasonable length. And to do biblical scholarship requires not only a knowledge of like anthropology and ancient history, but also requires linguistics, natural sciences in some instances. There are so many cool fields wrapped up into biblical scholarship that there's something there to tickle your brain. We were led to believe the Bible tells one story, but it's literally an anthology of stories that were compiled together over time. You may not like the story you were told before, and I know I didn't. That's okay. But in the margins of these pages, in the silence between the words, in the book's many omissions, redactions, and translations, there may be a story you would love if you were willing to give these words a second look through a different lens. I don't know how to end this. I think I have to do something. Yeah, apparently y'all talk back. That's wild. I think we've got like 5 to 10 minutes if there are any questions or comments.
I'll start it. Karen and I are great fans of Bill Maher, okay? I love to see his dialogues and debates with conservative Christians because he rips them apart, and he knows more about the Bible and history, and I'm so impressed, Cory, with you. That was fantastic backlog or background information and stuff that I wish I'd have known 15, 20, 30 years ago. Thank you so much. Any other comments from anybody? Questions?
I too was raised Irish Catholic, and to avoid going to hell for using birth control, I had 6 kids before I was 26. Oh. But I am really glad to be a UU. I had expanded my thinking in left the Catholic Church because there was no way I would annul a marriage and delegitimize my children. And there is one saying in the Bible that I've been thinking a lot about lately, and it is, "Let he is who without sin cast the first stone," because I've been persecuted by 2 of my children. And thank you. It was very enlightening.
I'm glad.
George Harrison said in one of his songs, "When you have seen beyond yourself, then you will find peace of mind is waiting there. And the time will come when you see we're all one and life flows on within you and without you." And that reminded me of one of the things that you had on your slides.
Fantastic, thank you.
Like yourself, also recovering Catholic. Also fascinated by studying the Bible in it. And I do have a recommendation on YouTube. There's a Center Place, spelled Centre, because it's from Toronto. Center Place. And if you just look up, there's this marvelous biblical scholar who was raised Mormon, apparently, and kind of rejected that himself, but he does fantastic and well-researched episodes on all things biblical, and he talks about all of these different gospels, and he talks about the history, does nice chronological order of, when this happened, how this changed this, and also, again, how the translations affect all of this and everything else. So just a recommendation there, Center Place out of Toronto.
Dwayne?
Well, thank you for being here. I'm going to buy you lunch today, my friend. we're going to go out and talk.
Okay.
Okay. Well, take you to Perkins then. So I appreciate what you're saying, that I get a lot of my biblical understanding from comedian Ricky Gervais, who's really quite astute at your type of presentation, and he just owns it. What I've noticed over the years, because I'm a recovering non-baptized Methodist, and I'm probably the only person in the Methodist Church that ever got kicked out of catechism, because I just asked too many questions. My point in all of this is the religious right, the people that you're describing, the lady with the angst against monster drinks and so many other things, they have memorized their presentation, and they just cannot see. They force themselves to stay within that box and repeat and repeat and repeat the wrong messages. And there's something quite different when it comes to Unitarians. We will argue, just argue, because we like to talk and discuss, and we'll form a committee to make sure we have enough people to discuss a topic, that sort of thing. I just wonder why they think they're going to convince anybody when they get to with me anyway, they get to a point of anger. They cannot get out of their box. And that hurts society because we give them too much microphone time. So I'm done.
I can actually speak to that. I don't know if I'm allowed to talk back in the talk bag.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so there's a psychological concept called affective override. That's affective with an A. And it's this idea that when we get emotional to a certain point, we're no longer engaging with that prefrontal cortex anymore. This is the part of the argument where someone starts pounding on their chest and going, "I'm an American, I'm a patriot American," and you're like, "Okay, buddy, that's fantastic. I'm so glad you're so happy to be here," right? That level of anger you're describing, that fervor, isn't coming from a place where we're actually trying to convince anyone. It's where we are psychologically defending ourselves. Right? Oftentimes when we are talking about someone's values, when we're trying to speak to them about something that they hold dearly, usually a part of their identity, they get very defensive. And when you start poking and start going, I think you're wrong about this, they're not hearing, I think you're wrong about this thing you think. They're hearing, I think you are wrong. I think you fundamentally, your identity, something about you is flawed and wrong. Now, that's not what we're saying, but it's what can be heard. So then they kind of lock in, and they have that defensive script that they're ready to start spitting out, and they'll say it louder and louder and louder until you stop saying the thing that's hurting their feelings. When I see that, I don't see someone who is mindless. I see someone who is scared. I see someone who's vulnerable. I see someone who has something that they hold on to dearly, and I can respect that. And it's in those moments where rather than going, okay, I try to make myself a little bit smaller and go, all right, I hear you. Sounds like you're really upset. Do you want to talk about it? I've never convinced anyone that I'm right, so especially not someone who's screaming at me. Normally it's a bad time to start that argument. But I wanted to speak to that. I think that it's less so about the fire and brimstone actually being convincing to outsiders, and more so about it being convincing internally or speaking to the crowd that already agrees with you. I think it's good rallying measures rather than actual evangelicism.
Anybody want to have the last word over here? Did I see a hand?
I am also a recovering Catholic, and I wanted to say, I read something a long time ago about actually purgatory not being a real thing in the Bible. Is that true?
That wasn't part of my research today.
Oh, okay, sorry. Never mind.
I want to look into it now, though. Thank you.
Okay.
I think you're great. Please come back.
Thank you.
Sure. I don't purport myself to be a history, I don't know, I guess I'm a history buff, but it's just interesting to me when you start looking at history and things that relate to history, and you start to see little places where, you know, the church stepped in and decided, well, I don't think this is right, I don't think that is right, let's see what we can give the people. And it's all of the people in charge of the church and things like that who are the ones that step in and they decide what the general public needs to know. And I just think that's interesting.
Right. Yeah, so that was one of the big things when we talk about any history class like that you took in high school, and we talk about the printing press and why it was so revolutionary. The printing press wasn't just revolutionary because it allowed you to mass copy books, because before they had to be handwritten and hand scribed. It was because most of the scribes at the time belonged to the church. So any book you wanted copied had to go through church's hands, and maybe it wasn't a perfect copy. Maybe something got left out when they were making that new book for you. But now you had these mechanical plates that you could set and print off dozens, hundreds of the same page over and over again in near perfect replica without someone writing it for you. So yes, that screening of history through the church is very common all throughout history.
I know what it was that they left out. They left the L out of the word celebrate. So it says celebrate.
Sad. Yeah, they also cut out a sea dragon in the beginning of Genesis, which makes me sad. I lament the sea dragon. Yeah, originally God has to defeat Leviathan when he's splitting the seas, and then I think the idea was, well, we can't have God be challenged by anything, so now the Leviathan just doesn't exist. I'm like, oh, justice for the sea dragon, man, come on. So I believe it's time to extinguish the chalice. So if y'all could say the words for me while I deal with this candle. We extinguish the flame. Told myself to write a benediction and then I didn't, so I'm going to try and make it up on the spot. Like we've talked about today, I know that a lot of people have wandered away from their faith. I find that most UUs aren't born. They kind of find their way here, right? We are a bunch of refugees from other religions that we didn't quite fit, right? And I think it's sad that when we are leaving whatever faith we started with, we try to leave all of it. there are things we're allowed to take with us. There were authentic values there that are good for humankind. There may be things that expanded our knowledge. There may be things that call on us to be better people from our home faiths that we can bring with us here. We can make the traditions our own. We can change things as we need to. We don't have to let it all go. And what I was hoping to do with this sermon, aside from being a little cheeky and a bit of a contrarian jerk, and also convince you guys to play a Disturbed song at church, which is, I had so much fun when Steve approved that. I was hooting and hollering, is to show that there is something good there if you're willing to dig for it. And there's atrocious stuff in there too, don't get me wrong. Some of the stuff I cited, not great, not a fan. But when we are looking at the text as an actual text, as opposed to the literal word of God, there is so much to glean from it, so much knowledge it can offer, that I would hate to see any of that go to waste. So I hope we all take away from this that some things deserve a second look. A critical second look, but a second look nonetheless. And I hope it makes us all wholer for the experience. I just made that up. Feeling really proud of myself, actually. And with that, I'd like to end with our postlude.
And now for all of you youngsters you've been very, very good tonight. I'm very proud of you. Here are the animals.
Sometimes I seem to be mad. But don't you know that no one alive can always be an angel? Or when things go wrong, I seem to be mad. I'm just a soul whose intentions are good. Oh Lord, please don't let me be misunderstood. Baby, sometimes I'm so carefree, with a joy that's hard to hide. And then again it seems that all I have to do is worry, and then you're bound to see my other side. But I'm just a soul whose intentions are good. Oh Lord, please don't let me be misunderstood. If I get edgy, I want you to know that I never mean to take it out on you. Life has its problems, and I've got my share. And that's one thing I never need to do, 'cause I love you all. Oh, baby, don't you know that I'm human? I have thoughts like any other one. Sometimes I'm